Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is my review of Selma. Oh, glory, glory, glory. The awards buzz is off the charts for this one, and after seeing Selma, I can definitely understand why. So let's not waste time and just jump in to the many things this film gets right. Let's jump in by talking about our main star, main character, and focus of the film, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And David Oyelowo did a fantastic job at portraying this legend. He really brought humanity to the character. He was convincing, he was poised, he was inspirational. He was everything you could have asked for out of an actor playing one of the most iconic figures and influential people in United States history. And throughout the film, it didn't feel like you were watching a character on screen. It felt like you were actually watching Dr. King himself. And that's a real accomplishment for an actor, to completely immerse the audience and make them believe that it's not a character and they're not an actor. So, great job from David Oyelowo. But in addition, Dr. King was written so well in this film. This is not a, let's put this person on a pedestal and I'll just praise their accomplishments and love them for what they did. Of course, his work is on the screen. It's a huge part of who he is and the reason why we know him as we do. And we get to understand and relive, for many people, these great accomplishments that he did make and the strides he made in the civil rights movement. But the film delves so much deeper past that into something we don't get to see very often in biopics about civil rights leaders especially. When you're a leader of a movement, or even a part of the movement in general, it's always glorified. You're making change, and you're making change for the better. But this film does such a good job at showing the vulnerability that happens behind the scenes. You're not always confident in what it is that you're doing. You're self-conscious. You don't think you're making a difference. You don't know where you're leading people the right way. You take the criticisms to heart. You hear what people are saying, and it makes you question yourself. It makes you question your mission. It makes you question your methods. Everything. And this movie does such a good job at showing all of that and how it affects, Dr. King, as well as show some of his less admirable sides, whether that be through his marriage or his interaction with others inside of the movement. It just shows that he's not as perfect as we would like to revere. He did many great things, but great people are not great in all aspects of life. And unfortunately, his marriage suffered because of the great work he was doing for the rest of humanity. He just had somebody by his side that was along for the mission and could take it and could deal with whatever was coming at their marriage. But this movie also showed what kind of great support he had from his surrounding people. The others in the movement had to help move him into making action happen. This wasn't all just the Martin Luther King show. Other people were involved, and they helped motivate him and keep him moving to push for change. But outside of David Oyelowo, the entire acting cast did a really strong job. I thought the writing on this film was spectacular, and it wasn't just a necessarily paint-by-the-numbers biopic. I like that it focused in on Selma and this march and this town and what bagging, this town meant for the entire civil rights movement. It would have been too much to try to tackle everything that Martin Luther King did, to go his whole story. That's just so much material, and none of it would have gotten the proper care. Instead, I like that we had a clear direction, we had a clear goal, and we wanted to tell this one portion of the overall story and tell it well, tell it in detail, and give you the full scope of what happened here. In addition, I just think the voice of the film was very strong, the direction was very strong, it was very focused, And we were made to feel the heartache of what was happening in Selma and what it meant for this movement to move forward. Even though we knew the outcome, the stakes were still so high. And that's just a wonderful thing, is when people know what's going to happen. We know the end result of this film, yet the stakes feel so high. And you're so invested in the plight of what's going on and the plight of these poor people that you're watching on the screen, that this movie was just entertaining from beginning to end. It kept you fully invested and fully caring about what was going on the screen. But the movie definitely wasn't perfect, and I did have a few problems with it. So I did talk about the direction and the strong voice. I do question a little bit some of the directing choices, however. So there are a couple moments, and I think it only happens 2 or 3 times throughout the entirety of the film, where we go into slow motion, and really dramatic scenes, really stylized shooting, and to me, those moments took me out of the movie. It felt so real, so gritty, it looked great, and then we were thrown this curveball to where it's like, oh, this is a movie. And I don't know, I personally was taken back by it, and it took me a little bit out of the movie. I think it's definitely not a big detraction. I think it looked good, and it was done well. Just personal choice, meh, I could have done without those dramatic slow-mo scenes. But this movie is amidst controversy, if you haven't heard, about how President Johnson is depicted. And I have to say, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm putting this as a negative, but I am kind of in the middle. So I agree that President Johnson is depicted in a mostly negative light, and that may be unfair, that may not, but he is depicted in a negative light. And why I think this leans toward being a negative on the film is that it took the cheap way out in a narrative sense. So we needed this conflict, this villain, and that was represented in President Johnson himself. And he's not shown as a villain. He is a full character, fully realized, fully characterized, fully fleshed out. He is struggling, and that's what I liked about it, is he's struggling with this decision, he's struggling with his own biases and his own prejudices that lie underneath, and it's hard. It's not just that, I'm gonna do the right thing. He needs to not just appease Dr. King, which he does, but it takes him fully believing it, and fully finally buying in, and fully understanding. And that's what he wrestles with throughout the film. And I think that's actually very strong, and he's actually really well written. However, from that narrative standpoint, the movie copped out on being something deeper. So they needed a person for the audience to visualize the struggle. We needed somebody to be the obstacle to overcome, when in reality, the obstacle was racism, prejudice, institutionalized repression of an entire group of people. That was the obstacle. That was the villain. That was the problem that our characters were working to resolve. And I think it dumbed down the audience by making President Johnson be the fall man for that. He wasn't the only one. There were definite actual villains in the film inside of the town of Selma. But he was the overarching problem, winning President Johnson over. And I think that's a cop-out. We didn't need somebody to show us what the problem was. We knew what the problem was, and it would have been deeper to stay more focused on the actual problem than trying to kind of pit the audience against President Johnson for the most part, and wanting to shake our president, shake some sense into him. I liked the way that his character was fleshed out, but overall I think it was just kind of a cop-out. But really, those were the only problems I had with the film, and they were overall minor, because I really loved Selma. I loved that they used actual footage from the actual march. I loved the heavy impact that it has on you several times throughout the film. You're left shocked, you're left in disgust, and you end up coming out learning a couple of new things. It's not groundbreaking, but it tells a story, an important story that hasn't really been covered in actual mainstream media. Beautifully shot, it's a beautiful story, and you get to see an iconic figure who changed the course of United States history as a human being, and learn more about him as a person and what it meant to him to undergo this huge task. So overall, I say this is a definite recommend. Definitely go see it, and I can't really recommend it enough. Plus, it's definitely required Oscar viewing. So this is homework for all of you trying to keep up to date on award season. So that has been my review of Selma. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click like down below and subscribe to the channel while you're at it so you are always up to date on our latest videos. Also, join in on the conversation. Have you seen Selma? Did you enjoy it? What are your feelings on this whole President Johnson controversy? Let me know either down in the comment section below or hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!